Well, fellas.
Hello.
Sometimes we want to build that wall.
Build the wall.
Yeah.
But it's a good chant.
We want to build. Yeah, it's catchy.
It's fun.
Let's see if it goes
use
anywhere.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. We want to build. We don't want to build real walls.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that just takes work.
Sometimes we want to build legal walls.
Oh.
Yeah, to protect one thing, to protect the chocolate from the peanut butter.
And the peanut butter from the chocolate.
Exactly
it goes
right.
both ways.
They're both delicious, but they're better separately.
As everyone can.
I don't know where I'm going with this.
No,
but,
no. You know what we should do? We should talk to somebody else instead of us.
Yes.
Because we're worthless.
We're totally.
Well, I mean, and as our listeners know, we've started a thing for December. We're trying to raise as much money as we can for the FFRF, the Freedom from Religion Foundation.
Yes, indeed.
And rather than have us blather on about it, we actually brought someone from the FFRF to come on and tell us what it's all about. So we got Patrick Elliot to actually show up and say words to us. Patrick, welcome.
Welcome.
Oh, happy to join you.
Now, since this is a billable hour, let's kind of get through it fast, right?
Yeah, in 6-minute chunks. That's
Oh,
what I do.
Jesus.
Yeah, that's right. Well, okay, so Patrick, we've been talking about your organization for a while now. One of the things we keep mentioning that it's a very important time in our nation's history to be bolstering the wall of separation between church and state. Are we full of shit? Is it worse? It feels worse now than it has ever felt, at least in my lifetime. Would you agree with that or not?
Yeah, I think it's gotten worse in at least since the 2016 election, in part because at the federal level things have been a lot worse. A lot of the people at the highest levels of government have really tried to push religion and government and mix them together. And then the other, I guess, issue is a lot of people are less religious now, and so I think there's a kind of a hanging on of that power that people in power want to keep it, and so there's kind of a pushback at society becoming more secular generally.
So tell us about your work. You guys you're not out there trying to tell everybody that they have to not be Christian anymore, despite what plenty of people would claim about you. So what is it that you guys do?
Well, we really do two things at FFRF. One is to work to keep state and church separate. That's what I do, and that's what our legal department does. But we do also try to educate the public about non-theism, and oftentimes that's just letting people know that, hey, we're here, we're people in the U.S. and what we we don't believe in a God, and that's okay.
Is it though? I mean,
What stops you from murdering people?
why are there still monkeys? But so what? Right now it's the holiday season, and the sort of out front and center stories that are happening on that front all seem to revolve around, Jesus and Mary and Joseph on the state grounds and that sort of thing. And that seems like, that's one fight. And we should probably talk about it. You guys have been front and center on that fight.
In the war on Christmas.
Yeah, exactly. So why is it so important to either get Jesus off the state grounds or allow Satan on?
Right. We just want the government to not be involved with religion. And so actually I think the best solution is to not open up a forum for people to put these types of things on the government property. But you're right, if they do, that's where FFRF or the Satanic Temple and groups can put up their own displays. And really, and I know some people maybe roll their eyes at these kind of fights, but they are symbolic. Obviously, the state capitol buildings, there's groups out there trying to put religious displays, nativity scenes in all these state capitals because they think that's important. Obviously, they could put these across the street at any church they want. Right. But they want the government and religion. They want the weight of the government to be behind religion. And so I do think, that's worth groups and individuals pushing back and making sure that the government's not taking sides on a religion issue.
Well, it's interesting that you call it symbolic, and I think that you're right to do so because in the end, if there's a Christmas tree at my state capitol, I'm not going to be that pissed about it. It's a pretty thing. And even if there's a manger scene, it's like it doesn't do me that much harm, but there's a larger issue at play.
Right. And I think, Patrick, you were saying symbolic. And I think there's a presumption that the other side is acting in good faith when it's just an innocent thing that they want to put a nativity scene in the state capitol or the courthouse. But really, to my estimation, that's a provocative act as much as the Satanic Temple responding to that is a provocative act. These are Christians saying, no, the government will reflect our particular values and no others.
Right. And we see this besides just, the temporary and holiday displays, in the permanent monuments. I've always kind of termed it as territory marking, marking the government building as a religious place or affiliating it with Christianity specifically. So that's why, I kind of use those two terms, either symbolic or marking territory as being a religious place.
Yeah, it's one of those things where somebody walks into, if you walk into a courthouse and there's a symbol of a specific religion that isn't yours hanging over the doorway or posted prominently on the wall, you're not going to feel like you're going to get the a fair trial there.
Yeah, you're being sent a message, in my opinion, if you're, not a Christian, another religion, or specifically a non-believer.
Right, and these things get thrown back at us all the time with if In God We Trust is on our currency, they'll then use that to justify other violations. And so we think, the small violations are worth stopping or neutralizing, again, with other messages being put out there.
And I think that's intentional, the Under God and the Pledge of Allegiance and In God We Trust on the money. These are all newer additions to those things that I think are part of a larger strategy that can just encroach and encroach and encroach. And if we don't fight those battles, they will continue to do that.
Exactly.
So I don't know if you're aware of what's going on here in Utah, but we don't have so much a separation of church and state as we just don't have a state. I think you guys should really look into that.
Yeah, we need you to move from Madison, Wisconsin.
The church has a road department here.
Yeah, you're going to really need to relocate to Salt Lake City.
Yeah.
But what's the front lines for you guys right now? Is it south, north? Is it across? Is it everywhere at once? What's kind of the hot spot that you guys are really active in?
I think a lot of people assume the South is where, the worst violations come from. And I think they are more prevalent there. But,
it does feel like Roy Moore might have been the epicenter for a while there.
Right. And actually, we have a history going back, I think, to the early 90s of fighting him when he was a trial court judge there. And he's obviously had his career that we had been, involved in pushing back. But so, we do have problems out of places like Alabama. But one of the cases we've had recently that was a pretty big success was out of New Jersey. They have a state constitution that prohibits funding or repair of churches, and Morris County, New Jersey, had spent, I think, over a few-year period, about $5 million to repair churches under historic preservation program. And so we won at their state Supreme Court a unanimous decision saying that, in fact, the New Jersey Constitution says you can't fund these. So it's not just one area in the country. It's kind of all over the place. But I do think some of the violations in the South are the more egregious violations and the more prevalent that people just have come to, or even maybe people in Utah have kind of come to expect state church to be merged. And so they're just not even pushing back as much as if that same violation were to happen in New York or California, for instance.
What are some of the more egregious violations of the church-state separation that you guys have had to encounter recently?
Well, one case that I've worked on for a couple of years now, but was actually just argued in the appeals court just this September, is out of West Virginia. Mercer County Schools has Bible classes. They've had those for over 70 years.
Jesus.
We requested documents to take a look at, well, what does this curriculum really look like? And it's as bad as you'd think for a West Virginia, Bible class in a public school to elementary school students. So it starts in first grade, but one of the lessons talks about having the kids imagine what it would be like to slide down the back of a dinosaur like Adam and Eve would have done.
What? To be fair, I think about that all the time.
Yeah, that's a fun thing to imagine.
So worse than it just being a straight Bible class it's not even a fucking accurate Bible class.
Yeah.
It's just
Wait a minute.
garbage.
You don't remember in Genesis chapter 22 the sliding down?
Well,
the,
most of the dinosaurs are actually in Revelation.
Oh, that's true.
They're the other end of the book. Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
so I think the problem with teaching, how do you teach a first grader the Bible is they have to go to these other devices to get them to imagine things, and it becomes kind of a fairy tale world, and it obviously shows the elements of some of these creationism that they're trying to push. You really can't teach.
And these are fully
the
public
Bible.
schools.
Yes.
Wow.
Yep, it's an entire school system in West Virginia. That case has been going on for I think about 2 years now. And again, we're at the appeal level on more of a technical issue as to whether a parent whose child was experiencing this had a number of problems trying to get her child not to be involved in these classes, and so she made the decision to send her child to a neighboring school system. Which is obviously a big burden to do. And so the courts have to decide, well, can she still have standing to challenge the class? And so we obviously think, this is avoidance. This person's avoiding an ongoing problem. Of course, she should be able to challenge those classes.
Yeah, that word standing can really be a bugaboo, can't it?
Right. We've had a fight in a lot of our cases on it. And sometimes the courts gravitate towards it because they don't want to rule on, controversial things like, Mike Newdow's famous case on the Pledge of Allegiance that went to the Supreme Court. It's easier to punt it away on an issue like standing rather than, ruling on kind of the meat of it.
Right. So that brings me to one thing that I think might be important, which is that you guys just on your own can't go into some other state and file a lawsuit necessarily. You have to have someone who's local to the area who has some sort of standing to be the plaintiff. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. And that's always, and maybe you hear this in the news stories or the comments, which you shouldn't read, of course. Everybody says, well, this out-of-state group is involved. And really, legally, we couldn't be involved without local people. In some of our cases, including our school cases, we have to protect those people too. So they may be a Doe plaintiff, for instance, using a pseudonym in pursuing it, but there's still an actual family involved in challenging it. And so that's really the case in any of our cases. So it's a pretty bad argument to push back against us when we're just an organization trying to help the local people who presumably wouldn't have the knowledge or resources to do that on their own.
Right.
And as you were alluding to there, a lot of these people are in small communities. A lot of these cases happen in small communities where if they're a non-believing family or a non-Christian family, for instance, they might be the only ones. And so there's a real risk to them in, deciding to move forward with this stuff, right?
Right. And I mean, just to give you an example, in one of our cases in recent years out of Indiana, and this was a school case, we had pseudonyms used to try to protect our plaintiffs because obviously it'd be hard to continue the school year with the whole school against you on a religious issue. But one of my fellow attorneys received a threatening letter basically saying, I'm going to, cut you up and put you in the Elkhart River. It must be Elkhart, Indiana, is where the community is. And so obviously, I see why people in the community don't want to be known to be involved because you're going to get that type of threatening response.
I've always been impressed by that Christian message of love.
Right?
Yeah, there's so much hypocrisy in the work we do. I don't even know. It just doesn't. I don't even consider that. Now, obviously, they're trying to. This was about trying to keep a big segment in the school program at Christmas time. Had a huge live nativity scene, and they would actually read some Bible passages during it. And so that's what they were defending. And in defending that, they're basically committing a felony by threatening a lawyer who's just trying to help out
with murder
the family. Yeah, right.
It is kind of crazy, but that is one of the problems of the work that you do. And what is that a lot of people, as you say, don't want to wade into it because they're afraid of the reaction of the community around them. And the reaction is so strong and vitriolic. I mean, because people don't see it as I'm trying to maintain a separation between church and state. Like, all I want is for you to be able to practice your religion as you please, and then not foist it on me. But they don't see it that way. They see it as an attack on the religion itself. How do you manage that? Do you guys do anything to try and
educate
and keep that sort of crazy sense that you're attacking religion at bay?
I mean, I think that is a big part of the messaging that we try to use and make clear that we want a government that's not involved with religion, which in fact, is good for religious people. They shouldn't want the government, taking sides on religious issues or taking, one interpretation of the Jesus birth narrative when we know the Bible itself has different versions of that. But I don't think, my honest opinion is I don't think people give it that much thought. I think it's much more at a just basic level. We've bothered them by somehow questioning that this should be done. And a lot of times these things are really embedded traditions in communities. And so I think that's the other thing. How dare you, come in and try to change something we've been doing forever, when the reality is, if you're violating the Constitution, you should have stopped a long time ago. Why are you still, why are you still going at it? So I do think it's a challenge separating the legal issue from purely, somebody's opinion on the actual religious matter at hand. But I think there's just a lot more psychological issues going on that even go beyond the religion. I think people just want to keep things that they've been doing. They just don't ever want to stop. They want to keep their local traditions.
Well, I think what you said is spot on. I think it should be the motto for religion. Don't give it too much thought.
Yeah. And, it's funny I don't know if you've had many cases here in Utah, but we're constantly, the church-state fight here is a daily knife fight. And what is most bad as an atheist, what's kind of baffling to me watching specifically Mormons fight, institutional Mormonism fight to do away with the church-state separation is Mormons are among the Christian community in the United States, they're a tiny minority, and they're kind of despised by, mainline evangelical Christians. So church-state commingling nationally would not be favorable to them. And it's very hard to get people to understand that, once they've dispatched us progressive, non-believing atheists or whatever, they're going to go after each other with brickbats.
Right. This kind of fits the mold of everybody, likes state church separation when they're the minority religion. And then when that flips, it's out the window. That's true even for some of the early colonies in the United States that were fleeing, various forms of persecution. They were quick to set up state religion, and then having splintered up, other groups splintering off from those. So I think it's interesting because at least I had been told, and you all would know better than me on this, but that at least within the church there are some precepts that are supportive of state church separation. Maybe it's not implemented in Utah, but I guess.
Well, and you're absolutely right. It comes from a time when the Mormons were a despised and persecuted minority out there in the Midwest, that they kind of injected into their religion these tenets about making sure the state and the church were separated, that when they got to their own state, they started to think better of.
Yeah. So, it's all fun and games until somebody else has power. It does seem like if any of these Christians thought for even a moment about what would happen if their state suddenly became majority Muslim and they were in the minority, they would suddenly have a real respect for the church-state separation laws.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, that's one. That's the the one I'm loath to mention because there's obviously a fear of Muslims that, in the religious right at least, is not founded in what's actual reality in this country. But certainly, having people imagine what it'd be like to be on the other side, should be persuasive. Obviously, it doesn't work often.
Yeah. Right. If the number of things that should be persuasive ever actually were persuasive, we'd be in a different world.
Yeah, you'd be out of a job.
So talk to our listeners about what they can do to join the good fight, to be part of the solution, not part of the problem.
Well, there's a few things. First, and I say this regardless of my own financial interest, but I would say to join groups that you agree with. and maybe for younger people, that's not a thing that they're used to doing because of social media. It's easy to like things, but actually, pony up the money, join groups like the Freedom from Religion Foundation, the ACLU, and other groups. And I say that in part because you become invested in what those groups are doing. You now should have a say in how they're operating. And also it gives those groups power. We can say, I think we have about 32,000 members nationally right now. It should be a lot higher than that. Certainly the more people we have, the more convincing that can be to both state and federal officials when we're speaking on behalf of a bigger group.
Absolutely.
The second thing I would say is that people shouldn't be afraid of activism. People will like it when hearing from you. You may not want to call your congressman's office or your local city council person's office, but being out there certainly helps keep state and church separate and helps the cause.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I don't know about these two deadbeats, but my wife and I are members of your fine organization.
I'm a member of the Freedom for Religion Foundation.
Oh, damn!
I think I checked the wrong box. I got to go back and look at the paperwork, but yeah,
you're an old guy. Internet's hard for you.
It is hard.
Well, Patrick, thank you so much for coming on to the show. We're certainly doing whatever we can to support you. Let us know if there's more that we can do here at our fine show. It's a really important show we have, so we'll do what we can.
Thank you, and thanks for your endorsement.
Good luck in Wisconsin. It's just a stupid, shitty mess up there.
We'll get a new governor next year, so that'll be great.
Well, we don't get to look down our nose at many states often. So.
All right. Well, yeah, thanks so much, and hopefully we'll have you on another time sometime.
I'd love to. Thank you.
Thanks, Patrick.
Thank you.